Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Crossed Up. Yeah, that's me, Anthony Sanfilippo, doing the hosting. Normally, it's my partner Bob Wankel, but Bob is not here. Following the Phillies opening day loss to the Texas Rangers, 11-7. My compadre, my son Anthony Jr. is here to join me for a two-person episode, a Sanfilippo episode, and that's because Mr. Wankel had baby boy Wankel today, earlier today. So congratulations to Bob, his second child. I'm sure he will be putting out all the wonderful details, but we predicted this. And the funny thing is, last year when Bryce Harper broke his thumb, Bob and I on the podcast predicted the exact day that Bryce Harper would come back, and he came back early, and we were good. Like, we made this prediction, and he came back early, and yes, so that we had that. And then when Bob told me at the beginning, when we were first starting bringing the podcast back a couple months ago, he told me that his wife was due April 3rd, and I said to him, I said, "You know what's going to happen, right?" I said, "The baby's going to be born on opening day." And he said, "I know it's going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. It's going to be opening day." And lo and behold, the baby was born on opening day, right? So Bob is on out for paternity leave. It's not a long paternity leave, but he will be out short term. So it'll be a lot of me and you, kid, doing this podcast. And for those checking out on YouTube, I should identify, just in case you can notice, you could tell, I did not get into a bar fight. The little bruise over my eye, and if I took my glasses off, I have stitches in my eyelid. I had to have a minor surgical procedure this morning to remove a cyst from my eyelid. So that's why I look a little beat up this evening while we're doing this. So yeah, Bob's out. I'm playing through injury. So it's going to be all you, Ant. I mean, you're going to have to carry the load the rest of the podcast.
Well, I'm glad that you decided not to tell the truth and say that I punched you when we got into a fight. But it's fine. People can believe your little eye story. That's okay.
That's right. I've learned not to watch baseball with you any longer in person. Although we are going to. The funny thing is that we should announce this. We are going up to Yankee Stadium next week, and I just, knowing how you are when you are out watching a game at a local restaurant or bar or other kind of establishment, I'm a little worried. I got to be honest, a little worried at what it's going to be like up in the Bronx Zoo with you at a game next week. And we're going to see Nola Cole, so it's going to be kind of an interesting game, the final game of that series. So I'm sure we'll have some stories next week following that game to talk about. But we got to talk about opening day today because it started great. Like, it looked like it was going to be a fantastic day for the Phillies, up 5-0 in the top of the fourth. And then in the bottom of the fourth, it all went to hell. The Rangers scored 9 runs in the bottom of the fourth, 5 off of Aaron Nola, 4 off of Gregory Soto, and then tacked on 2 more later. Connor Brogdon gave up a home run to Brad Miller. I think there was another run scored. I forget how it happened. It was a blur. Phillies end up losing 11-7. A lot of positives on offense, a lot of negatives with the pitching. So let's just dive into it. And the first thing we got to talk about is the thing that I think, and it's going to be frustrating because everybody knows, and I think it'll be nice to have you chime in on this because everybody knows that I constantly defend Aaron Nola. I've written stories about Aaron Nola, defending him. I defend him on Twitter. And look, he did not have a good game today. I mean, you don't blow a 5-0 lead. It's the first time he's ever blown a 5-run lead in his career, okay? You cannot blow that lead. And, for whatever the reasons, you listen to him after the game, and he says, yeah, he's a little unnerved by the pace of the pitch clock, and we're going to dive into pitch clock stuff at the end of the podcast today, so hang on for that because I know that we're both going to have some negative stuff to say about it. But so you can't have the inning that he had. You can't have that fourth inning because the first inning he was a little wild. You could tell that he didn't have his best stuff. But second and third inning he looked a lot better. He looked really good in those innings, and even got the first. I think he got the first 2 outs of the fourth inning before he went imploded. Gives up a 3-run homer to Robbie Grossman of all people. So fans start killing him. I mean, like if you go on Twitter, you look everyone on Twitter, Facebook, Phillies fans absolutely blowing. Aaron Nola is not a big game pitcher. It's the same BS we've heard for years and years and years. And I look at it and say, look, it's one game. Yeah, he's to blame, right? You can't have this happen. But I mean, how do we? What can you say? What can we tell people, Anthony, to make them sit there and understand that Aaron Nola is not as bad as they think he is, and is in fact one of the best pitchers in the game?
I mean, first of all, I mean, I know that it was being pumped a lot on TV about how he's thrown more innings than anyone in the past 5 years. Well, 6 years, whatever it was. And he's a horse. Even if you say he doesn't win, he goes out and he throws innings. And it's not like he's going up there with a 4.5 career ERA. It's a 3.6 career ERA. So anybody who can throw with that bulk, with that ERA, I think is something that like fans in general should just not be upset about. Of course, I know you're an avid defender. I'm a big defender of him as well. His other statistics are outstanding. He had the best strikeout to walk ratio for a Philly in 11 years since Cliff Lee last year. And all we hear about is how he blew it in the World Series and all that. So it's all noise. It's when you're the guy, you have to be the guy. And unfortunately, he's kind of like, he's the Rhys Hoskins of the pitching staff, because Rhys was here when we were bad. He was around for all of that, and he was supposed to be like the beacon of light. And so if he's not perfect, the fans are going to get on him because they're like, oh, you're just like all the other schmucks that were on the team back then. And it's kind of the same thing with Aaron Nola, because he was here when we were bad. And difference is that Aaron Nola has been top 10 Cy Young multiple times, third, fourth, and like his whip was below 1 last year. Like these are fantastic statistics, and you can't just look at wins and losses. You just can't.
No, exactly. And and it's funny, like we were looking this up before the show, and we were saying, on Baseball Reference, they do a comparison, and they can statistically compare pitchers to every other pitcher in the history of the game, and who are they most similar to. You can look at who are they most similar to their entire career. His entire career, he's most similar to
Zach Wheeler.
And at age 20,
fans love,
right? Who the fans love, right? Most similar statistically to his teammate, Zach Wheeler. And prior to turning 29, so he turned 29 this year, they compare him to Matt Latos, who for a short period of time was a really good pitcher for the San Diego Padres. Then he had some injuries and fell off the map. But who was he most similar to at age 28? So prior, going into last season,
Max Scherzer.
Oh, most similar to Max Scherzer. And the year before, who was he most similar to?
Jim Bunning.
Oh, who's a Hall of Famer, right?
Hall of Famer. His number's up at the stadium.
Oh, okay. Yes, it's retired. It's a retired jersey. Okay. All right. I'm just saying, like, and we don't need to, and this is not to defend today's outing. Again, he had a bad fourth inning, probably should have been pulled a little bit earlier in the inning, because you could tell that his stuff just wasn't sharp. He couldn't get his fastball down. The curveball didn't. I mean, it was okay. It just wasn't great. And it looked like he was throwing a lot. Got away from the 2-seamer a little bit. It was mostly the 4-seamer. His velocity was slightly down in that inning. He was down to like 92 when he's normally around 94. So there was a lot of things that were kind of like red flags. Aside from the fact that he was a little wild early. He's not normally a wild pit, right? He doesn't walk a lot of guys, and he was wild in the first inning. So there were some red flags. And so, you could sit there and argue, should Rob Thomson have got him out sooner? So, yeah, I mean, not a good start by Aaron Nola by any stretch of the imagination. But let's put a couple other things into perspective on Aaron Nola from this game. How many innings did he pitch in spring training?
13.
He threw 13 innings in spring training. Now, I know the Phillies will sit there and say, we had him throw a simulated game on the backfield, which they did, Wheeler as well, and they each threw a simulated 6-inning game. And that's fine. Like you're facing like live batters. You are sitting down between innings, so you have your up-down time, right? So all that stuff is in fact taking place. But you're pitching to teammates. You're pitching to guys in the leverage situation is not, if there's no high leverage, you're just back there throwing. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. Your goal is to throw X number of pitches or X number of innings and then call it a day, right? So there's a lot different there. And it's another thing, when you're a competitor, there's difference between a game that matters and a game that doesn't matter. It's just there just is in your head. So 13 innings, is that enough for a guy or any pitcher, really? Not let alone a guy that you're relying on to be like one of the aces of your staff. Is 13 innings of spring training enough before you go into the regular season?
If you're a reliever, I guess. But they're down there the week after the Super Bowl, and I'm not expecting them. Obviously, they take 2 weeks to like get into shape and get going. But like the first spring training game is like the last couple of days of February, so they spend a whole month down there. In 30 days, you threw 13 innings. You threw less than 1 inning every 2 days. Like, of course, your arm's not going to be ready for the season. Like, of course you're not. Right. Garrett Cole, for example, who had a great opening day, threw 22, 23 innings.
For the Yankees,
live, and in just 5 starts. So he had like normal 3 to 4 innings. He was pushing himself a little bit more, and he looked great. He looked like Garrett Cole. Obviously, if you don't do that, Aaron Nola, like, he didn't look great. Like, didn't look like old Aaron Nola, like, to start, but by the 4th inning, you can just tell he was losing it. His arm wasn't there yet.
Yeah. And so that makes you wonder a little bit, Ant. Like, I know the Phillies were a little concerned about pitching because of, all the injuries that happened in spring training between Andrew Painter and Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez and Nick Nelson. I mean, guys were dropping like flies, and their depth was really being challenged to the point where the last week, other than Bailey Falter getting a couple of starts in the last 10 days, they really just did minor league pitchers and bullpen games in spring training, right? Just because they didn't want to risk losing anybody else. Is it possible that approach, while it got Nola and Wheeler through spring training healthy and feeling good and getting into the season, could have a slight backfire effect here to start the year, at least in the first couple of starts?
Of course. I mean, there's that phrase of managing scared. The organization's acting scared. They're like trying to prevent something that you can't predict. Like, you don't know if someone's going to get hurt. I mean, yes, obviously if you throw more, there's a higher chance of it, but you have to get ready. Like, this is a dogfight. You're in the toughest division in baseball. You need to win games. You can't, like, it has to be go, go, go from the start. And you can't like nurse these players like you could if you weren't competing. If you're trying to save them for next year, if you're trying to win this year, you got to get going. So it was a mistake.
Yeah, and I'll give you another one that's kind of an interesting perspective to kind of look at. JT Realmuto and Garrett Stubbs were both off at the World Baseball Classic for the better part of 2 weeks. So none of the pitchers worked with the guys who are actually going to be catching them in these games that matters. Yes, Stubbs came back a little early, but he was banged up, didn't catch it all after he came back. Realmuto did catch a few games, but again, by the time Realmuto came back, he wasn't catching Nola and Wheeler. He
caught
Bailey Falter and a bunch of relievers and minor leaguers, right? So I guess the question is, even though they've worked together in the past as a tandem and have had good success together in the past, when you're Aaron Nola and you're adding a different changeup, he's now got 2 changeups. They were talking about the fact that he has both a 2-seam and a 4-seam grip changeup to try and make both of his fastballs look a little bit different. When you're working on those things, isn't it possible that you're not really quite on the same wavelength at that point with your starting catcher, no matter how much you talk about it before the game, when you're in a certain situation and you only have so much time now between pitches to kind of throw a pitch, that maybe that's not, you guys aren't quite in sync yet?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty obvious. I mean, Nola was quickly going away from pitches in the start because there wasn't confidence and there wasn't trust. And they weren't moving like they normally do, but you still got it. Like, if you have an arsenal, you have to throw it. And it felt like he was going away from that. And that can definitely stem from the fact that JT hasn't caught it. He doesn't know it. He's not calling for it. You have a whole communication issue there. So I know that part of this whole thing isn't even, it's beyond the injuries. It's because they pitched so late into the year last year. They're trying to give them time to like rebound from October, November. But like, it's been 3 months. JT went and caught other people for a month for Team USA. So like, you gotta. It's a new season. You have to treat it like it's a new season and it's like a new team. Because if you just be like, it'll just click like last year, it won't. It's not how it works.
Exactly. Yeah, and it was just surprising to me. Like it really was that you knew. I think you could tell right away that Nola was not Nola, even though he got through that first inning unscathed, didn't give up a hit, right?
For 3 innings.
Yeah, and then right for the first 3, but at least the second and third inning, like I kind of felt like he was pretty good in the second and third inning. Like it was like, okay, he just needed an inning to kind of settle in. But yeah, he got away from a lot of his pitches. He ended up throwing 32 fastball out of 72 pitches. He threw 32 four-seamers, and then he threw 20 curveballs. Like he really got away from the changeups and the cutters and the sinker. And I know that the cutter, the changeups that he did throw got hit a little bit, so maybe he didn't feel confident with it. But he only had 5 swings and misses today, which is rare. I mean, he usually generates more swings and misses. He's one of the best strikeout pitchers in baseball. We know this, right? He had led Major League Baseball in the strikeout to walk ratio last year. And he only had 5 swings and misses all day. So you could tell that Nola was not there, was not, his four-seamer was at 92.8 average for the game. And his two-seamer, which I guess they call it a sinker, 92.2. So both of them were a little bit down. So there was something that was just not right with him. I just wish that they would have got him out of the game a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because it's opening day. You have a tight pitcher situation as it is. You do have a day off, so like you can not worry about stressing arms out too much. But you're coming out of spring training, you want your guy to go if you can. Yeah. And his pitch count was fine. Like it wasn't a pitch count thing. Right. It was just, you can tell he lost it, and that's when you have to just nip it in the bud. He doesn't have it. Cut your losses and try to figure it out from there.
In all honesty, the Rangers did that. Now, and to be fair, they did announce before the game that deGrom, because he was a little bit behind, because he had that, I think he had like a back of the shoulder kind of thing at the start of whatever it was at the start of spring training. So it was a little bit behind. I think that they said that they were going to try and, limit him to about 70 pitches or so. And I think he threw 73. So it's not like it was a surprise that they pulled deGrom when they did, but the fact of the matter was that they looked at the situation and said, we got to get him out. I mean, they had bullpen activity up even sooner, and it was like, we got to get him out because this game's getting away from us at 5-0. And they were able to take advantage of Nola and Soto in the next inning. But Bochy, he sent his pitching coach out, Mike Maddox, and basically to tell deGrom, you're done after this batter. Even though the next batter is a good matchup, like this is it. You got to come out.
I don't think that was the conversation. I think the conversation was buy as much time as you possibly can. He had the slowest pickoff move to second. He stepped off the mound. They were trying to get someone warmed up. That's what that conversation was.
Well, sure. But I mean, at the same time, he had to know he was done, right?
He knew that coming in. It wasn't like it was that visit to the mound was buying time to make sure an arm was ready.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, by the way, speaking of deGrom, as much as the Phillies hit him, and every hit off of him was an extra base hit. Every one. They got 7 extra base hits off of Jacob deGrom in 3 2/3 innings. Who I don't think there's much of an argument that when he's healthy, he's the best pitcher in baseball, right?
Yes.
Did anybody out there criticize Jacob deGrom for giving up 5 runs and 7 extra base hits in the opening day game? Is he not a big game pitcher because of that? Does he stink because of that? Just wondering. Just curious.
This is a little cherry picking here. I mean, you are talking about a guy who had a 1.7 ERA in a full season.
But this is my point though.
I know. I
Right?
understand.
Yeah, I mean that's the point. No, it's perfectly. Oh, he can have Jacob deGrom can have a bad game. Aaron Nola cannot. But let's not just talk about Aaron Nola, because it wasn't just him. I mean, yeah, of course he blows the 5-0 lead, but he didn't lose the game. I mean, he didn't take the loss. He comes out, it's 5-5. The Phillies then bring in Gregory Soto, their new big acquisition and trade of Matt Vierling and Nick Maton to bring in Soto, another fireball lefty reliever, and he comes in and it went walk, bloop single, walk, the number off the end of the bat, right? That he tries to throw home to get the force at the plate on JT, and Smith beats. I think it was Josh Smith scored, right?
Drew Smith. I think
who was it?
Drew Smith.
Josh, I think it's a J. Josh Smith, I believe.
Oh, okay. I think
whatever it is. But anyway, he scores at that point, and then it's like, okay. And then I give up. I think he gave up another hit after that, and then it was enough. They take him out, and then Brogdon gives up it was a wild pitch.
Yeah, pass ball.
Pass ball. Yes, it was a pass ball. That's what it was. Pass ball, and then Brogdon comes in and gives up the hit that scores yet another run. That's charged to Gregory Soto. Look, Soto didn't get into spring training until late because he had visa issues. The Phillies maintained the entire time, and I was down there, that don't worry, it's not a problem. He's close to our training facility in the DR. He's been working with our guys down in Dominican Republic. He's on his program. Everything's fine. He was not good once he got into spring training. And then he gets into the first game in a spot he's probably not used to, coming into a game in the fourth inning, and was just awful. So what do you make of that?
Well, he shouldn't have been in that game at that spot, both from a preparation standpoint and from knowing who he is. I actually do like Soto a little bit. I liked him back when he pitched with the Tigers. He is a wild pitcher. He's always struggled with that. And to have him come in a situation where it's a tie game and you're in this big spot was just kind of like, hey, here's our new shiny toy. Hope it works out. Like, that wasn't a strategic decision. That was a heart decision. And when you make heart decisions, you're going to get beat. Yeah. And that's what happened.
And it's funny because they go to Andrew Vasquez after that, later. I mean, after, the Brogdon comes out. Yeah. And then they go to Vasquez, who's really like your long guy, right, at this point. Well, doesn't it make sense, since it's only the fourth inning, to go to Vasquez in that spot? And then, look, if Vasquez gives up the hit, okay, fine, it's Vasquez. And you're going to sit there and say, well, it's a high leverage spot. It's a tie game, and, we can't afford to get behind. But the way you had hit up to that point, even if you get behind a run, like, what's the big deal? You're probably going to score more, still score some more. The fact that you didn't go to Vasquez and you blew out Soto there that's why it didn't make sense to me. Like, I kind of felt like maybe Vasquez can come in. Look, if he gets the out, great. Okay. And then he could go the next inning and the next two innings if you needed him to, because he stretched out to go multiple innings, and you don't burn your bullpen so much. But Soto, you knew that was it. He was coming in to get out of that inning and wasn't going to come back out the next inning. And he didn't even get out of the inning. So I felt like that was a bad call by Rob Thomson and Caleb Coffin.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a big proponent of, if your starter comes out early, you have to go to a long reliever next. That's not, the order doesn't matter really as much. I mean, you're going to go to a long reliever at some point, and you want to try to maximize, bring him in against the bottom of the lineup generally. But in this spot, it is just, Soto isn't the guy at all. And there isn't harm in bringing in a different lefty. It's not like you didn't have a choice of another lefty here.
Well, another thing that's interesting is Thompson said after the game, they wanted Matt Strahm to get one inning. They want to get him in because he's starting a game, right? And so they want to get him in and get him some action so it doesn't go 8 days between appearances. So he was always going to throw at some point today. Wouldn't that have been a better idea then, to throw Strahm there and save Soto for later?
When I said lefty, that's what I meant. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also a big guy of if you have a bullpen day, you should be pitching out of the bullpen in the game rather than pitching in the bullpen during the game. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, if you knew this was going to happen, this is the perfect kind of like, oh, this is like this happy circumstance, not really happy, but it's a circumstance where this is the perfect situation to get that one inning. And instead, they were like, let's just go with the guy who hasn't pitched to our catcher or hasn't really pitched at all and is very wild. That just doesn't make sense. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it wasn't good. And really, I mean, even though they did, get back to 9-6, and then Brogdon gives up the home run, and that kind of, put the end of it. You give up 9 runs in the 4th inning. I think that just killed the vibe. That killed the offensive vibe because they were rolling offensively. And we got to talk about that. I mean, I'm going to get into that too. But I mean, just to kind of put a bow on this bad pitching outing by those 3 guys, that kills it, right? I mean, you just don't have the same momentum at the plate once you give up 9 runs in the bottom of the 4th.
Yeah, if you're not at the plate for 30 minutes, it's tough to keep those bats hot coming back out.
Right.
Like they were passing the stick, they were taking extra bases, they were stealing, they were playing like a good brand of baseball. And then like when just everything goes wrong, it's tough to just like, okay, let's just go do it again. And it's funny because I feel like they even at the very end in the 9th inning, you felt that kind of energy come back a little bit, but it was too late by then. So
yeah, for sure. But at the plate, I mean, look, they had a great approach with deGrom. Like I said, they had 7 extra base hits off of him. It all started with a double by Nick Castellanos down the right field line, and boy, did they pepper the right field corner, right? I mean, holy cow, left-handed, right-handed did make a difference. That's where they were hitting the ball. Double down the right field line by Castellanos, and then a 2-run home run by Alec Boehm. That really kind of got things started. So let's start with those 2 guys. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. His home run was opposite field as well to right field. So let's start with those 2 guys. Castellanos ends up with 2 hits. He goes 2 for 5. Like we said, the last at bat wasn't the greatest. I think we said that before we started recording. The last at bat was not the best for Castellanos, but his first 4 at bats, even though there were 2 strikeouts in there, he didn't swing at bad pitches in those first 2 strikeouts. The last at bat, he got himself in a hole. He swung at 2 bad pitches out of the zone, and he smartly asked for time at that point to recollect himself. Then took 3 balls before he struck out on what was a strike. It was a breaking ball, but it was a strike, unlike the first 2 that were out of the zone. But other than that, I mean, 2 hits, scored a couple runs, was very active on the bases. Talk about Nick Castellanos first, and then we'll dive into Alec Boehm, who had 3 hits. It was only a triple shy of the cycle, so he had a single double home run. Really looking good at the plate.
Yeah, Nick had a great game. Just plain and simple. I know that last at bat wasn't the greatest, but the thing that everyone was worried about with Nick was his mental fortitude. And as smart as he approached those first 4 at bats, he never tried to do too much. On the double, he's just hitting it where it's pitched, and I think that was generally the consensus for a lot of right-handed hitters against deGrom. Since he's going to be throwing away from you, just go with it. And that's exactly what Castellanos was doing. He was being very patient, picking his pitches. And yeah, while he did fall behind 0-2 in that last at bat, the ability to compose himself and bring himself and make it a competitive at bat again is the kind of thing you want to see moving forward. He doesn't have to hit a home run every game to become the old Nick Castellanos. He doesn't have to rip doubles all the time. As long as he's having good at bats, they will happen. As long as you find your pitch, you're going to drive the ball. He's a major leaguer. He's been a proven guy who can drive the ball. And if he just picks his pitches and is smarter at the plate, it will come, and then it'll feel easy.
Yeah. And you mentioned something before we started recording as well about just noticing like the energy that he had once he was out on the bases. You want time to dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. So there was a point in time, I think Boehm took a close pitch. It was away or in. I think it was away. I forget where it was exactly. But and I think Crucker noted it on the broadcast. But Nick was out there, is pumping his fist, telling him yeah, that pitch was outside. He feels like he's a part of the team, and he feels like he's part of that energy. Where last year it felt like he was Nick Castellanos. Now he feels like he's a Philly, and that's an important thing for him to do to endear himself back to people, because he lost so much credibility last year, but also to build camaraderie and become that guy without overstepping.
Yeah, I think it's a very important thing to notice, and I think you're right on with that, because that matters. That matters a lot in this clubhouse. That matters a lot to this city. And as long as he's productive and you see that out of him, I think that will benefit him in the long run. And I think that that's important, that he has that mentality right from day one. And I think that he's feeling the need to pick up that slack because of, Harper not being there, Hoskins being out for the year. I think Castellanos looks around and goes, okay, those are two veteran guys. I have to be one of those guys. I have to make up for those guys in that capacity, not necessarily make up their production, but I have to be one of those leadership types. And he's kind of taken that to heart. He said it down in spring training, and you saw it in game one. And so I think that's certainly a positive. Alec Bohm, man, not just bulking up. I mean, that was huge, but I mean, I feel like there is a new confidence with him at the plate too. I mean, he's always been able to hit the ball anywhere. So nobody was ever shifting him before. So, taking the shift away does not impact Alec Bohm positively or negatively in any capacity. But he just looks like he goes up there and has a real idea of exactly what he wants to do with every swing.
Yeah, he is a fighter up there. He is a contact machine. He fouls off so many pitches, and it's tough. I think it's tough on a pitcher because you're thinking, what pitch can I throw to get him to swing and miss? And he's not going to swing and miss very often. He's so composed in terms of making contact, and it's going to turn into those things. Like, he's not even, he bulked up and hit a home run, but like, if you're constantly hitting the ball and putting it in play, and you're as tall as he is, you're going to accidentally hit 25 home runs if you do this consistently. And if you keep putting the ball in play and keep putting a good swing on any pitch in the zone, it's going to be tough to pitch to you, and you're going to get pitches that you like then. Because we don't really know what he likes. He just likes everything. So I'm sure he has a spot that he likes, and like, he'll get it because no one really knows what he likes.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good point. He had a really great game. Hopefully you see that continue. Beyond that 2-0 lead, then the Phillies tack on, and they were able to do it with, again, extra base hit after extra base hit. Brandon Marsh had a double and a triple. Trey Turner's triple was unbelievable because, and I put this out on Twitter, seriously, some players, that's only a single. Most players, it's a double. Only a choice few players can make that ball be a triple, and Trey Turner's one of them.
I think what's funny about that, because I thought it when he hit it, the way the ball was curving, it was going to go into that little like foul territory well that they have out there.
Yeah.
And the route that the right fielder was taking was like as if he was playing it further down the wall.
Yeah.
And I think what happened was Trey, as he's getting into second, he's looking up towards the throw, realizing the right fielder misplayed the ball and just taking off.
Yeah.
And he's just not even thinking, like, even if he has no idea where the ball's at, but the fact that he sees the right fielder reacting a certain way to be like, oh, shoot, the ball's over here, he's going to just go because he's got the speed to do that. So, I mean, I think it's that awareness.
Yeah. And I'll tell you another thing that I noticed when he runs, and maybe you never notice this. You don't notice this when a guy's on another team, but you really notice it when he's on your team. It's almost like his and I don't know how else to describe it, but his steps are efficient when he runs. And what I mean by that is I don't see him making big turns. I see him, it's very sharp, and he cuts the corners of the bags quickly to turn and go to the next base. Like that's impressive to me. It's not like a lot of guys like to make the big wide turn at first base, or as they're hitting second, right? They start to give themselves that little bit of momentum and to come almost across the bag as they're catching the corner to head. That's that way they're already heading to third. He almost looks like he's, a tabletop hockey player who can turn on him, like just turn on a twist, and he's already in the opposite direction, right? And I just think there's something to that too. That's really, and how about the play at the plate, like the slide where he curls himself up to make sure he gets underneath on that wild pitch. Like, I mean, he got home a play that a lot of guys would have been really, really close. He made it seem very simple and easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when having efficient base running ability is more important than speed. I mean, Chase Utley, for example, was one of the best base runners of all time. Wasn't fast. People don't remember that. He wasn't slow, but he wasn't fast. Trey Turner is also fast.
Right.
So when you combine the two of them, it's like, wow, what am I watching? It's almost like Lorenzo Cain was like that too.
Yeah.
Like it's the same concept. It's like, whoa, how is he getting all these bases? Because not only is he efficient, but he's also fast. And when you combine the two of them, it's deadly.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. So you have that. But I mean, Brandon Marsh, give him a lot of credit too. Double and a triple, both lines. He went. The triple was down the right field line. Yeah, and the double was down the left field line. So that was impressive as well. Am I forget who else am I forgetting? Did anybody else have a
Realmuto?
Realmuto, 3 hits. Yeah, I mean he had what, double triple, single double triple. He didn't have a home run, right? So
Triple
he had single double.
There, but it's okay.
Yeah, it was misplayed ball in center field. But point is that, like, I know a lot of people, and again, it's one game, and I know a lot of people, but I want to say I know a lot of people were worried that they weren't, without Harper, without Hoskins, they're not going to be able to generate offense. And you look at a game like today, again, against deGrom, and they did what they did. I don't think this lineup is going to struggle to put up offense.
No, not a little bit. I mean, that's what you get Trey Turner for, because not just because he's so good in his own right, he presents this other way to play, and other guys will copy, and it'll pass on, and it'll bring these other guys like Marsh has that. That's he's not too close to the level of Trey Turner, but he's got that style of play the same way. And so when you have a guy doing it at the top of the lineup, it makes it easier for the guys further down to like, oh, I can create too in my own way, rather than just trying to hit home runs every time.
Yeah. We'll talk about a guy who didn't play today and who wasn't even dressed today. What is not even? I mean, he's officially on the roster, but not officially until Saturday, because he had to do get some traveling in to get to Texas and meet the Phillies. Phillies made a trade last night. Well, we're recording this on Thursday night after the game. But yesterday, Wednesday, they made a trade with the Oakland A's for outfielder Cristian Pache, who, just to give a little bit of background, was a highly touted outfield prospect for the Atlanta Braves. Got an opportunity to be their starting center fielder in 2021 at the beginning of the year, and we're talking 2021 is the year they won the World Series. He got off to a really terrible start offensively with the Braves. But his defense was so good, and a lot of people were comparing him to Andrew Jones. That's how good of a defensive center fielder that he is. And they were just like, well, man, if the bat just comes around, we got a star player here. Well, the bat never came around. And it was he was so bad offensively that even after Ronald Acuna got hurt, the Braves said, let's trade for 3 outfielders rather than put Pache back out there in the outfield. He then gets traded to Oakland as part of the Matt Olson trade last year, and the A's look at it and say, oh, okay, we got a 23-year-old highly touted prospect. We're going to put him out in center field. And he was even worse with the A's. He hit, I think, 166 with Oakland. He had a decent spring this year. He batted .308 in spring training for the Oakland A's. But the A's had decided that they wanted to move on from Cristian Pache and basically traded him for nothing. The Phillies gave him, a guy named Billy Sullivan, minor league, single A relief pitcher is what Billy Sullivan is. And who knows, maybe eventually becomes a major leaguer. But that's what they traded away for Cristian Pache. And Pache is going to be on the roster, and Dalton Guthrie is going to be the guy that gets sent down. Pache is out of options, so you can't. If the Phillies were to send him down, you'd have to clear waivers. Obviously, they felt that he wouldn't have cleared waivers if Oakland waived him, so that's why they traded for him. So, talk to me about Cristian Pache. Even the fact that he can't hit a lick does he benefit this team as the 26th man on the roster, even just if he's a late inning defensive replacement / pinch runner?
Yes, that's the short answer. The long answer is it is a risk. Anytime you take on a 160 hitter who is at best going to hit 180, that is definitely a risk. I think the better comp would be more so to Kevin Kiermaier than it is to Andrew Jones, because Kevin Kiermaier also can't hit. But I think he helps not just because defensive replacement, obvious. He's statistically speaking, like he was at I think the 4th best center fielder last year, and he only played in 80 games. Like that's how good he is out there.
Yeah.
But not only can he fill in late, he can also spell Brandon Marsh, which is going to be huge in trying to develop Brandon Marsh, because you can't just send Brandon Marsh and tell him to play center field 162 games and expect him to develop healthfully and the way you want him to. You need someone out there, and even if they're not going to provide offensively, if they're out there and they can lock down the defense out there, that's enough on its own. Like I would be okay if he hit 140 on his and he started those games out there just to spell Brandon Marsh for a bit.
Yeah, and it's when you think about it too, Ant, like we've discussed this in the past. Like one of your big things last year, one of your big concerns was all year long that defensively they got issues. Like with Schwarber and Castellanos in the outfield. This is before they even traded for Brandon Marsh. You had Odubel Herrera in center. An aging Didi Gregorius at short. They hadn't traded for Sosa yet or Marsh yet. Like it was defensively, the Phillies were a mess. And then they went out and got Sosa, who's very good defensively. They got Marsh, who, although he's better on the corners, he's pretty good defensively. Signed Jake Cave this year, who's not a great defensive outfielder, but for the corners, he's slightly above average, got a strong arm. And now you trade for Cristian Pache, and you can look at it and say, in a game, let's just say like today, Schwarber's your DH. In a game like today, you got Cave in left, and you start Marsh in center, and you start Castellanos in right. If you're winning the game late, you can put Marsh over in right and Pache in center. Now all of a sudden your outfield is Cave, Pache, Marsh. They never could do that during the regular season last year. Anything close to that good in the regular season last year. You were basically Marsh in center. Matt Vierling was your, and not that Matt Vierling's bad, but Matt Vierling was your defensive replacement in the outfield. Now you add Turner, and maybe you throw Sosa out there as a defensive replacement at third base. All of a sudden, you look at the Phillies late in the game. They're holding a 1 or 2 run lead in the 7th inning, and you have 3 really good defensive outfielders and 3 really good defensive infielders, and Real Muto behind the plate. Your only weakness is maybe first base. Holy cow, that's a big difference from where they were a year ago, and I think that can make a difference in a few games.
And I also think that with the not the abandonment, but the disallowing of the shift, that outfield defense is going to become that much more important, because there's going to be more balls out there. They already, even though they made that crazy run and Castellanos made all those catches, that was the one thing that really hurt them that isn't talked about, is just they simply couldn't get to balls in the gaps in the World Series, and and definitely all year last year. So having the option, the ability to cover all that ground is going to save so many outs and help so many pitchers that it's going to help. It's not going to be like, this is not an earth-shattering trade. I'm not trying to make this be like, oh, Cristian Pache is the savior. But the idea that they care about these things and that they're trying to address them lets you know that they're making decisions that make sense.
Yes. That's the truth, and that's great, and it really does give them the flexibility, like you said, to play Pache maybe against a really tough lefty that Marsh does not match up well against. So you get him a day off. Pache can play out there. It allows you to get more DH time for both Schwarber and Castellanos, or give them a day off if necessary. It really gives you a lot of outfield flexibility without having to, especially with Hoskins hurt now. I know that they were thinking about having Sosa be an outfield option, but with Hoskins hurt, and you got against lefties, Hall's going to play most of the time, but every once in a while you're going to move Bohm to first base. and you now don't have to worry about putting Sosa in the outfield to replace Marsh. Sosa can play third base or second base if you want to give Stott the day off, and you have someone else that can play in the outfield. So the flexibility that it gives the Phillies is paramount, and I think it's an under the radar trade that won't make big waves, but most of the time when you're a really good team, it's the trades like this that make the difference, right?
Oh yeah, and I think part of it too is like when you play backups to spell guys for a day off, you're losing their bat. You generally start your better bat. That's just how it is. Right. So to have a backup who, obviously is not going to be as good, is going to be even worse of a bat, but to have them to be such a giant boost defensively is like honestly a positive more than anything. Yeah, you're losing that bat in the lineup, but you committed to that fate if you're putting Dalton Guthrie out there too.
Right.
But now you're putting Cristian Pache out there who will catch everything in his range.
Yeah, for sure. I guess that's pretty much it for today. As far as the Phillies are concerned, they get the day off tomorrow. Saturday, Zach Wheeler takes the mound, 4:05 start time out in Texas against Nate Eovaldi. Rob Thomson said Schwarber will play left field in that game. So I don't know if that means Castellanos is your DH and Cave is in right, or Cave's going to be the DH. Obviously, they're going to try and keep the left-handed bats in the lineup against Eovaldi, so we'll see how that all lays out. But I think you're going to have a very similar lineup to what you had today in that game for sure. And then Sunday and Monday is when it gets interesting, because those are the 2 days. Sunday they play the Rangers again. Sunday Night Baseball, by the way, on ESPN. Martin Perez starts for the Rangers. He's left-handed. And then on Monday, when they start the series against the Yankees, it's Nestor Cortez in that game, also left-handed. So it'll be interesting to see what the lineups look like against lefties on both Sunday and Monday, how they decide to play that out. So looking ahead, again, I want to leave it with this as far as this game. Yeah, it sucks you lose opening day, right? It sucks you lost to the Rangers. It sucks you blew a 5-run lead. It wasn't the greatest. It started so well, and then you kind of went, the balloon deflated. I wouldn't put a lot of stock into the loss. I mean, you can't have a bunch of these, but these kinds of games are going to happen early in the season because the pitchers are just not where they need to be. And it's not just the Phillies. It's look around. And at least here's a silver lining from today, Ant. At least they didn't get hurt. No pitcher got hurt, because and you laugh, but Max Fried for the Braves, their opening day starter, left the game with a hamstring injury.
You just pulled a hammy.
And just pulling a hammy on your plant leg as a pitcher, that could knock you out for a few weeks, right? So now all of a sudden, not that that's going to kill them, but the Braves,
they have a million pitchers.
They have a million. You're right, they do. But you just lost your best pitcher for a couple of weeks. And the Mets, you can cue the Curb Your Enthusiasm music. Justin Verlander with a shoulder injury, and he is going on the IL as well. So there go the Mets again. And so at least your two biggest rivals just lost a top of the rotation starter, at least for a few weeks. The Phillies may have lost a game, but they did not lose a player. So at least in that vein, there's a positive, right?
Yeah, silver lining.
Silver lining.
I think the big thing to take away from this is you have to learn that Nola wasn't ready, and be prepared in case another pitcher is like that early in a game and get them out.
Yeah,
that's the lesson there.
I agree, and maybe that's something that Rob Thomson and Caleb Cotham can kind of take to heart a little bit and get ready for, the next several games in that capacity. All right, one last thing. And I knew I mentioned at the beginning that we were going to talk about this because I know you're going to be fired up about it. I know I was a little fired up about it. And I think it's just kind of ridiculous what the league is trying to, the message that they are controlling and trying to push on us as if we are not seeing things with our own eyes, right? Almost like, it's like the emperor's new clothes is what they're trying to do, right? here we go with the pitch clock again, and I have a feeling this is going to be a conversation topic. Everybody say, I think Kevin Kincaid wrote a story on Crossing Broad yesterday or the day before that said that we're going to forget about the pitch clock by the summer, and I completely disagree. I think the pitch clock is going to be a problem. I think it's going to stick around, and it's going to be an issue. We had two major issues today, and I'm going to talk about the two issues, and then I'm going to throw it to you. The two major issues that happened in Major League Baseball, one of them was Phillies related, one was not. The one in the Phillies game was deGrom was literally about to have a ball called on him because he was down to 2 seconds and was not ready to throw the ball, and he had suddenly had a pitch comm issue. Like he said, he couldn't hear in his pitch comm in his helmet, so he couldn't hear the voice of the catcher. And so they asked for time. He shows it to the umpire. Home plate umpire Jeff Nelson looks at it. He listens to it. deGrom makes the umpire listen to it. He holds it to his ear. Okay, nods, whatever. Then while the guys come out of the dugout to replace the pitch comm system, the umpires huddle. Okay, they have a little huddle on the field, and then they decide to call a ball. They call a ball. Now the Rangers are upset, and rightfully so. I mean, really, they really should be upset because it's ridiculous that a ball is being called in that instance. And so Jeff Nelson then has to call the video review room to discuss with them what happened. Take a look at it, see what blah, blah, blah. And, after about a 3-minute delay or a roughly 3-minute delay, they decide to take the ball off the board. Now, okay, everything's okay. That's the rule. And then, meanwhile, Kyle Schwarber is completely out of sync. All right. deGrom's been throwing warm-up pitches in between, but Schwarber's standing off to the side. He then has to step back in after a 3-minute hiatus. Kind of lost the mojo of the at-bat and face down a 100-mile-per-hour fastball that he swings through and strikes out, and he's pissed off. Rightfully so for Kyle Schwarber. So here's a situation where the pitch clock not only did not speed up the game, did not create action in the game, but actually created a detriment to it. Slowed the game, and it created a detriment as far as the batter, okay, in this instance. The other example occurred in the game between the Boston Red Sox and the Baltimore Orioles, where it ends up being a one-run game that the Orioles win by a run. But Rafael Devers is up at the plate, and I believe it was a full count. Maybe it might have been 2-2. I forget what the actual count was. But Rafael Devers steps to the plate, and he's in the box. He's absolutely in there. He didn't step out. He's in the box. And just the only difference is he's not looking directly at the pitcher, who at this point, by the way, wasn't ready to deliver the pitch. Was not ready. He was just still kind of standing there himself, looking for a sign. I don't even know if he was even looking at the catcher at that point. And at the 8-second mark, the umpire calls Devers for not engaging with the pitcher. Strike 3, he's out. So a guy just struck out, major, like a star player in a one-run game, just struck out because he wasn't looking at the pitcher. Okay, once again, is this creating action in the game? No, it's not. Is this good for the game? No, it's not. It's just ridiculous at this point. And the third thing I want to throw to this, going back to the Schwarber thing, Rob Manfred comes onto the broadcast. If you're watching from home, you saw this. He was on with Tom McCarthy and John Kruk. And the first question they asked him was about the issue with the pitch comm. And Rob Manfred said, yeah, I had to look into this before I came on with you guys. And he freaking flat out lied on the broadcast when he said the umpire did not know that the pitch comm had stopped working. Are you kidding me? That was the whole conversation before they huddled. He listened to Jacob deGrom's pitch comm. He held it to his ear. How can Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, come on the broadcast and go, oh, yeah, he didn't know. That's why he called the ball. That's BS, man. And it shows the fraud that they are pushing on us. And it's absurd. It's really absurd. It frustrates me. I get fired up about it. I know you're not happy about it either. I want to throw it to you.
So, I mean, the general thing to say about all of it is the pitch clock is causing judgment calls. Judgment calls in sports, no matter what sport it is, no matter what kind of fan you are, what you want to happen, make sports worse because it's all up to an arbitrary person who's not playing the game to determine the outcome of the game. Think about how mad people got after the penalty to against the Saints or the Rams or whoever. The Saints got screwed back-to-back years. Yeah. So, or the non-call rather, not a penalty. Think about foul calls in the NBA. Think about how people are mad about the strike zone being enforced with the umpire behind it. So much so that literally that's the only judgment call that was left in baseball. They were getting rid of all of them. They just added one back in. And the fact that despite all these rules, I know MLB's on this big, they have all these commercials out there talking about the rules. They're trying to be funny, saying they can steal bases now. The shift's gone. There's going to be more action. Notice how there's not, I'm going to call them paid media members, paid off by the league, going around and apologizing for anything but the pitch clock. Jeff Passan is the big one, who is the biggest puppet of the league. He lives in Rob Manfred's basement. And the fact that he has to go around, and other people too, it's not just him, but other big names in media have to go around saying how great the pitch clock is before it even happened. And the other thing that is big here, big, because everyone's saying that people will love the pitch clock and people have loved the pitch clock. In both situations, there was loud booing in the stadiums when these things happened. Mm-hmm. People did not enjoy this. The fact that you're going to sit there and pretend it's like a WWE thing. They're quieting out the crowd and being like, no, you like this. Like, it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And the fact of the matter is that if you can't, when you put a rule in, you have to have everything checked off. You have to know what happens in the situation. The MLB rulebook has rules for if someone was on first base, just sprints into right field for no reason. Okay, there's rules for that, but we can't figure out what happens when our shitty technology stops working. All right, it's ridiculous. And the fact of the matter is that you don't have the right people in charge, and it's not going to change because it's an all boys club, and they're going to keep appointing former players who already made their millions and other people who appease the owners to just do whatever they want, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and really, again, Anthony, and this is the thing that, and you were spot on with all that. The fans booing, right? Everything about it. It was just bad. But the whole thing that we were told about these new rules is that they were going to create more action in the game. And here's two examples in the same day, and the proponents could say we're cherry picking them. But we had several of them in spring training too. Like, I mean, we're not just cherry picking. We're pointing out every time there's a screw up. Every time it screws up, it's not affecting the game. Even when it works, even when it's called correctly, it's not creating action for the game. All it's doing is stopping the game for a few seconds, awarding a ball or a strike based off of that arbitrary decision that you just pointed out, and then says, okay, now let's get back to the game. So it does not engender action in any shape or form. It's as counterintuitive and counterproductive to the goal that the Major League Baseball has for it. And yet we're supposed to sit here and make pretend that we're not seeing what we're seeing. Like, I don't understand. I just don't understand why we allow it to happen, why we allow this to go. And I hope the fans boo the shit out of it forever. I hope that they never stop booing it. I hope they boo it every time it happens. And I can't wait, in all honesty, to be at Citizens Bank Park the first time it happens here. I can't wait, because that will be a great experience. And I hope Rob Manfred sees and hears that one too, because it's embarrassing what's happening to baseball with this stupid pitch clock. I don't care that it's made the game 20 minutes faster. I really don't care. 20 minutes. You want there to be more action. People won't let there be more action. People won't care about the 20 minutes if there's action. The problem was there was no action. There was no action in the game. Too many people were striking out, and there was no balls in play. Nobody was stealing bases. There was no more pitch outs. Like, these things went away. That was action in the game. You took out all that stuff out with doing things by the analytics. Let the game be the game, and the time of the game doesn't matter. Because look, A football game's 3.5 hours. Used to be 3. It's now 3.5. It's a half hour longer now than it was when I was a kid. Okay. And some of that's television, but the games are longer because of the way that they changed the rules. But you don't ever hear people complaining about that. Why? Because there's constant action. There's always action. It doesn't matter that it's 3.5 hours, right? So if you have constant action taking place in your sport, then it doesn't matter what the time is. That's all. They're focused on the wrong thing. And they have some rules I think that they got right. Creating more opportunities to steal bases, I think it's a good thing. The potential for a little bit more offense, balls in play, I think it's a good thing. But rushing pitchers and rushing batters and having communication devices fail and not knowing what the rules are and striking guys out because their eyeballs aren't in the right place at the right time when they're batting. I mean, it's gotten to the point of absurdity. It really has. And I think this is going to ultimately be worse for baseball than it's going to be better.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fact of the matter is that you go to any other sporting event, and you're never watching and counting how long the game takes. And they all have clocks in them. Okay, yeah. You never see on ESPN, oh, this basketball game took 2.5 hours. No one says that. No one says when the Super Bowl takes 5 hours. No one says anything.
Right.
The MLB is saying these things, and so now people are saying it. Even to the point where my one friend to me today said that the pitch clock is good because it's creating action, which is literally it's just not true. The fact that a pitch clock exists is not creating action. The same amount of pitches are going to take place. Everything is going to also happen in this game. If anything, the fact that you're taking away pitches. You're literally taking away action by definition. But the thing is that the league has just been drilling this into people's heads with their BS media campaigns that they pretend that they didn't do 10 years ago and blame Mike Trout for not being more popular because they didn't do a goddamn thing back then. But now that they want to have their own thing, you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's just embarrassing. It's an embarrassment of a business decision too. Because guess what? What was the biggest thing that boosted baseball? The World Baseball Classic, not your stupid rules.
And hey, did they have the pitch clock in the World Baseball Classic?
No.
Did anybody complain about the time of games in the World Baseball Classic?
Nobody.
I didn't think so.
Globally.
Globally. That most watched baseball game in the history of the sport was Japan versus the USA. Nobody talked about the length of time. And everybody was there glued to the screen for Ohtani versus Trout in the 9th inning of that game. Nobody was not watching the game at that point. Nobody dropped off and said, yeah, it's too late. Game's too long. I'm not going to pay attention. Everybody saw it around the world. There's a reason for that because they let the game be the game. On that note, we will end this episode, which, hey, not bad for our first father-son episode alone, right? I mean, we did a good job here for an hour. Hopefully people will enjoy it. You can, find us on the Crossing Broad YouTube channel if you want to actually watch the show. But please subscribe to Crossed Up wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. Heck, I think you can even ask Alexa to play it, right? Say, Alexa, play Crossed Up, a Phillies podcast, and she will. So that's a pretty cool thing too. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter. It was up on the screen the whole time. I just put the ticker up, but I'll show the Twitter things again. That would be Bob, who's not here, new dad, in case you missed the beginning of the show, at Bob Wankel CB. I'm at Ant San Philly. The show is at Up Phillies. When are you getting the Twitter account that people? I get DMs from people, say, tell Anthony. I can't tell him on Twitter. Tell Anthony what I think. Well, great. Well, I can't. I can tell you all I want, but I mean, it'd be great if you got your own Twitter account.
Send a carrier pigeon. I receive them. I got a box.
One day we'll get him on there. So, all right. So Sunday night, I don't know if Bob will be back. It might just be the two of us again. But it'll probably be, we'll probably record Monday morning because Sunday night is the game. It's Sunday night baseball. So it'll probably be a little bit late to be recording Sunday night. But Monday will be the next episode. So be sure to tune in again on Monday. Until then, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the Phillies and the Rangers. And we will talk to you again on Monday morning.